The sun rose gently over the town of Obairi, painting the sky in hues of orange and gold. The morning air was filled with the chirping of birds and the distant clanging of pots as mothers prepared meals for their families. Among them was Mama Akin, a woman known for her resilience and her infectious laughter. Despite life's challenges, her small two-room house stood humbly at the edge of the village, surrounded by a modest vegetable garden that she tended with care. Mama Akin had one son, Akin, the pride and hope of her heart. Her late husband had passed away when Akin was only 3 years old, leaving her to raise him alone. Akin was no ordinary child. From a young age, his curious mind and quick wit set him apart. He was the boy who could fix a broken lamp, recite proverbs at family gatherings, and impress teachers with his intelligence. Mama Akin often said, "The chick that will grow into a cock is spotted the very day it hatches." She believed Akin was destined for greatness. When the news came that Akin had been admitted to a prestigious university of the state, Mama Akin danced barefoot in the compound, her wrapper flapping as she called out to her neighbors, "Come and celebrate with me, oh. My son will be the first graduate in this family." The neighbors cheered, and within hours, the compound was alive with drumming, singing, and the aroma of freshly cooked jollof rice. On the day Akin left for university, Mama Akin woke him up before dawn. She had prepared a pot of yam porridge for his journey and packed a small bag with essentials, clothes, toiletries, and a Bible. "Akin," she said as she tied his tie and adjusted his collar, "you are going to a land of opportunity, but also a land of temptation. Remember the son of whom you are. The world is like a marketplace. Buy what you need, not what looks shiny." Akin smiled, hugged his mother, and promised to make her proud. The University of Prestige was a sprawling institution, teeming with life. Students from all corners of the country filled the campus, their chatter a blend of different dialects. For Akin, it was overwhelming yet exhilarating. On his first day, he met Ifioma, a petite girl with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She was the kind of person who could silence a noisy room with a single glare. "You're Akin, right? The village boy with all the big dreams." She teased, but there was warmth in her voice. "Yes, and you're the girl who will help me survive this place," Akin replied, grinning. The two became fast friends, navigating the maze of lectures, assignments, and the occasional campus drama. Ifioma warned him early about the dangers lurking in university life. "There are groups here that promise wealth and power," she said one evening, her voice low. "They lure you with big talk, but they leave you broken. Avoid them, Akin. No good comes from cults." Despite Ifioma's warnings, Akin's path soon crossed with Damien, a final year student who carried himself with an air of authority. Damien was charismatic, always dressed sharply, and seemed to know everyone on campus. "You have potential, my boy," Damien said one evening after spotting Akin at a campus event. "With the right connections, you could become more than just another village boy." Akin was flattered. Damien introduced him to a group of well-dressed students who called themselves the Crimson Circle. They spoke of brotherhood, success, and the perks of being part of an exclusive network. "Imagine walking into any office in the country and getting respect instantly," Damien said, his voice smooth. "We look out for our own." Akin felt a mix of excitement and unease. He remembered his mother's words but found it hard to ignore Damien's promises. One night, as Akin sat in his tiny hostel room, torn between curiosity and caution, he heard his phone ring. It was Mama. Akin, my son, how are you coping with your studies? She asked, her voice filled with love. I'm doing well, Mama. Akin replied, though he felt a pang of guilt for not mentioning Damien and the Crimson Circle. Remember, Akin, she said, her tone serious, it's not every road that leads to the market. Some will take you into the bush. Be careful who you follow. Her words stayed with him, but curiosity continued to nibble at his resolve. One fateful night, Akin received a text from Damien, meet us at the old hall at midnight. It's time to see what true power looks like. Akin stared at the message, his heart pounding. He knew this could change everything. But was it worth the risk? Akin paced his small room, Damien's text burning in his mind. Midnight felt like an eternity away, yet he couldn't shake the weight of the invitation. What did Damien mean by true power? He wondered. Deep down, Akin knew he shouldn't go. He had heard stories of students who went missing or got expelled after being caught in cult activities. But Damien's words echoed in his ears. With the right connections, you could become more than just another village boy. By the time the clock struck 11:30, curiosity had won. Akin threw on a hoodie, tucked his phone into his pocket, and slipped out of the hostel. The old hall was a relic from the university's colonial past. Its crumbling walls and broken windows gave it an eerie aura. By the time Akin arrived, the faint glow of lanterns lit up the space, casting long shadows on the cracked walls. Damien stood at the center, his posture commanding. Around him were 10 other students, their faces partially obscured by red scarves. Welcome, Akin, Damien said, his voice low but powerful. You're about to join something greater than yourself. Akin felt his palms grow sweaty. He glanced around, noticing the serious expressions on the other students' faces. What exactly is this? He asked, his voice trembling slightly. Damien smiled. It's a brotherhood. A bond that transcends blood. We protect each other, elevate each other, and ensure our own succeed. But, like all great things, it comes with a price. Before Akin could ask more, Damien clapped his hands. 2 members stepped forward, carrying a black bowl filled with what looked like red liquid. This is the first step, Damien said. Drink, and you'll prove your commitment to the circle. Akin's heart pounded as he stared at the bowl. What's in it? Blood? Palm wine? Something worse. I don't think I can do this, he stammered. Damien's expression hardened. We don't force anyone. But know this, opportunities like this don't come twice. Walk away, and you remain just another face in the crowd. Stay, and you become unstoppable. The room fell silent. The other members watched him, their eyes glinting in the dim light. Akin thought of his mother, her sacrifices, and her dreams for him. But he also thought of his fears, of being left behind, of never achieving the greatness he craved. Slowly, he reached for the bowl. As the cold rim touched his lips, he hesitated one last time. Damien leaned in, whispering, Courage, brother. Greatness is never easy. Akin closed his eyes and drank. The room erupted in cheers, but the moment of celebration was short-lived. Damien raised a hand, silencing the group. "Now, for your initiation task," he announced, his voice cold. Akin's stomach sank. "Task?" Damien handed him a small envelope. Inside this envelope is the name of someone who owes the circle a debt. Your job is to retrieve what they owe, or teach them a lesson. Akin's hands shook as he opened the envelope. The name inside was one he recognized, Chaik, a quiet second-year student from his department. "What does he owe?" Akin asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Money," Damien replied. "But it's not about the money. It's about respect. Teach him not to cross the circle." The next day, Akin tracked Chaik down near the campus library. The slender boy looked up, startled, as Akin approached him. "Chaik," Akin began, his voice low, "you owe some people money. It's time to pay up." Chaik's face paled. I don't have it yet. Please, give me more time." Akin's chest tightened. He hated the fear in Chaik's eyes. This wasn't who he was. "Look," Akin said, trying to sound firm, "I'm just delivering a message. Don't make this harder than it has to be." Before Chaik could respond, 2 members of the Crimson Circle appeared behind Akin. They grabbed Chaik roughly, shoving him against the wall. "Where's the money?" One of them growled, "Stop." Akin shouted, his voice cracking. "He said he doesn't have it." The others ignored him, dragging Chaik away. Akin stood frozen, guilt washing over him. He had started something he couldn't control. That night, Akin lay awake, staring at the ceiling. He could still hear Chaik's cries, still see the terror in his eyes. "What have I done?" He muttered to himself. He thought of Ifeoma's warning. Of his mother's words, "Not every road leads to the market." But it was too late to turn back now. The following week, Damien called Akin to another meeting. This time, the task was even darker, testing not just his loyalty but his very soul. "Akin," Damien said, a cruel smile on his lips, "you've proven yourself worthy. But to truly belong, you must take the next step. Are you ready?" Akin's heart raced. He knew there was no easy way out. But how far was he willing to go? Akin sat in the old hall again, surrounded by the same dim lanterns, the same eerie shadows, and the same group of masked faces. But tonight, something felt different, darker, more foreboding. Damien stood at the center as usual, his voice dripping with authority. "Tonight, we separate the men from the boys," he said, pacing slowly. "You've shown loyalty, Akin, but loyalty without courage is like a bird without wings, it goes nowhere." Akin swallowed hard, his pulse quickening. Damien clapped his hands, and 2 members stepped forward, dragging a blindfolded student into the room. The boy was trembling, his muffled cries barely audible through the cloth tied around his mouth. "Meet Daniel," Damien said, motioning toward the boy. He thought he could betray the circle by revealing our secrets. "Your task, Akin, is simple: teach him a lesson he'll never forget." Akin's hands trembled as one of the members handed him a wooden rod. The weight of it felt heavier than it should have, as if it carried the burden of the decision he was about to make. I can't," Akin stammered. Stepping back, Damien's smile disappeared, replaced by a cold glare. "Can't? Or won't? I didn't sign up for this," Akin said, his voice cracking. Damien stepped closer, his tone icy. "If you back out now, you're not just leaving the circle, you're betraying us. And we don't take betrayal lightly." The room fell silent. Akin's mind raced. He could feel the eyes of everyone on him, their silent judgment suffocating. He who brings home an infested wood should not complain when lizards come to feast, he thought bitterly. This was the consequence of his earlier choices. Before Akin could decide, one of the masked members stepped forward. "Let me handle it," he said, taking the rod from Akin's trembling hands. Damien studied the man for a moment before nodding. "Very well. But remember, Akin, there are no free passes here. You will repay your debt to the circle, one way or another." Akin watched in horror as the masked member dragged Daniel away. The boy's muffled cries echoed in his ears long after they faded into the distance. Back in his hostel room, Akin couldn't shake the image of Daniel's terrified face. He barely noticed when his door burst open and Ifeoma stormed in. "What have you gotten yourself into, Akin?" she demanded, slamming the door behind her. "How did you?" "Don't ask me how," she snapped, cutting him off. "I know what you've been doing, and you need to stop. Now." Akin sank onto his bed, burying his face in his hands. "I didn't mean for it to get this far," he whispered. "Then get out while you still can," Ifeoma said, her voice softening. "These people don't care about you. They'll use you until there's nothing left." Akin looked up at her, his eyes filled with desperation. "But what can I do? They said if I try to leave, I'll be a traitor." Ifeoma sat beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Akin, sometimes running away isn't cowardice, it's survival. You need to tell someone. The school authorities, the police, anyone who can help." Ifeoma's words lingered in Akin's mind as he lay awake that night. Could he really go to the authorities? What if Damien found out? The man who holds the yam and the knife decides how the yam is shared, he thought. Damien had all the power, but Akin knew he couldn't live like this anymore. The next morning, Akin made his decision. He would go to the dean of students and report the Crimson Circle. It was a risky move, but it was the only way to break free. The dean's office was a stark contrast to the chaos in Akin's mind. The walls were lined with books, and the faint smell of coffee filled the air. Dean Umar was a stern but fair man, known for his no-nonsense approach. He listened intently as Akin poured out his story, his expression growing graver with each word. "This is serious, Akin," the dean said when he finished. "If what you're saying is true, the university must take immediate action. But you need to be prepared for the consequences. These people won't take this lightly." "I understand," Akin said, his voice steady despite his fear. "I just want out." That evening, as Akin returned to his hostel, he found his door ajar. His heart sank. Inside, the room had been ransacked. Books were torn, his mattress was slashed, and scrawled across the wall in red paint were the words, "Traitor." Akin stumbled back, his legs trembling. He knew this was just the beginning. The chilling word traitor stared back at Akin from the wall of his ransacked room. His heart raced as he quickly stepped back into the hallway, scanning for anyone lurking in the shadows. This is their warning, he thought. They know I spoke up. He clutched his phone, dialing Ifeoma. Akin, are you okay? She asked as soon as she picked up, her voice tense. They trashed my room, he said, his voice shaking. I think they know I went to the dean. Get out of there now, Ifeoma urged. You can stay on campus tonight. Meet me at Mama Chinya's place. Mama Chinya was a distant relative of Ifeoma's who ran a small restaurant off campus. Her place was a safe haven for students in trouble. Under the cover of darkness, Akin slipped out of his hostel, carrying only a small bag with a few belongings. His eyes darted around nervously as he made his way through the dimly lit campus. Every shadow felt like a threat, every noise made him flinch. When he finally arrived at Mama Chinya's, Ifeoma was waiting for him outside. Come inside quickly, she said, pulling him through the door. The warmth of the small restaurant was a stark contrast to the cold fear Akin felt. Mama Chinya greeted him with a knowing look, her eyes soft with concern. You've gotten yourself into something serious, my son, she said, handing him a bowl of steaming pepper soup. Akin nodded silently. His appetite nowhere to be found. The next morning, the dean called Akin into his office. We've launched an investigation into your claims, Dean Uma said. But until we can act, you must be extremely careful. These groups are dangerous. Akin nodded, but he couldn't shake the feeling that the Crimson Circle wouldn't wait for the university to act. By the end of the week, the retaliation had escalated. Akin received anonymous text messages, each more threatening than the last. You can't run forever. We know where your family lives. Traitors never go unpunished. The final straw came when he received a picture of his younger sister, Ada, walking home from school. Panicked, Akin called Ifeoma. They've threatened my family, he said, his voice cracking. I can't do this anymore. We'll figure this out, Ifeoma said firmly. But you need more help than the dean can offer. We're going to the police. The thought of involving the police made Akin's stomach churn. In their town, law enforcement was often seen as corrupt or ineffective. But Ifeoma wouldn't hear his objections. You're not just protecting yourself, Akin, she said. You're protecting your family, too. The police station was a small, unassuming building on the outskirts of town. The officer on duty listened to Akin's story with a skeptical expression. Do you have proof of these threats? He asked. Akin showed him the messages and the picture of Ada. The officer's face darkened. This is serious, he said. We'll assign officers to watch your family's house. But you'll need to cooperate fully with our investigation. Word of Akin's visit to the police spread quickly. That night, a group of masked men vandalized Mama Chinya's restaurant, breaking windows and spray painting warnings on the walls. If you keep hiding the traitor, you'll suffer, too, one message read. Mama Chinya refused to back down. Let them come, she said defiantly. I've faced worse in my time. Akin, however, felt the weight of guilt pressing down on him. His decisions were endangering everyone around him. The university suspended classes temporarily as the investigation into the Crimson Circle intensified. Several suspected members were arrested, but Damien remained elusive. One afternoon, Ifeoma found Akin sitting by the riverbank, staring into the water. "You can't give up now," she said, sitting beside him. "I didn't think it would get this bad," Akin admitted. "I just wanted to escape. Now, I've dragged you, Mama Chinya, and my family into this mess." Ifeoma placed a hand on his shoulder. "You did the right thing, Akin. Sometimes, standing up for what's right comes at a cost. But if you don't fight back, who will?" Her words stirred something in Akin. He thought of all the students who had fallen victim to cultism, all the families torn apart. If he could help stop the Crimson Circle, maybe his suffering wouldn't be in vain. A week later, Akin received an anonymous message: "Meet us at the old hall tonight if you want to end this." He showed the message to Ifeoma and the police. "It's obviously a trap," Ifeoma said. "I know," Akin replied. "But it might be the only way to stop them." The police agreed to set up a sting operation, stationing officers around the old hall while Akin went inside as bait. As he stepped into the dark, silent building that night, his heart pounded. He knew this confrontation could change everything, or end it all. The old hall was colder than Akin remembered, and the silence was unnerving. The faint smell of damp wood and rust lingered in the air as he stepped further inside, his footsteps echoing. He clutched his phone tightly, knowing the police were stationed just outside, ready to intervene at the first sign of trouble. His eyes scanned the room, but it was empty. "Welcome back, traitor," a voice echoed from the shadows. Akin's breath hitched as Damien stepped into the dim light, his towering presence as menacing as ever. Behind him, a dozen masked members emerged, their eyes glinting with malice. "You must be brave, or foolish, to come here alone," Damien sneered. "The ambush, I'm here to end this," Akin said, trying to steady his voice. Damien laughed, a deep, chilling sound. "End this? You don't end the circle, Akin. The circle ends you." Two members stepped forward, their movements slow and deliberate. Akin backed away, his heart pounding. "You thought you could betray us and walk away unscathed?" Damien continued. "We made you, Akin. Without us, you're nothing." "I was wrong to join you," Akin said, his voice rising with emotion. "But I won't let you ruin my life, or anyone else's." "Brave words," Damien said, signaling to his men. "Let's see how long your bravery lasts." The masked men surged forward, but before they could reach Akin, the sound of shouts and footsteps filled the hall. The police burst in, guns drawn, their voices commanding everyone to freeze. Chaos erupted. Some of the cult members attempted to flee, but the police were prepared, blocking every exit. Akin watched as Damien stood his ground, a cold smile on his face. "You think this is over?" Damien said, his voice calm despite the commotion. "The circle is bigger than me, bigger than all of you. Cut off one head, and another will rise." "Not today," one of the officers said, slapping handcuffs on him. As Damien was led away, he turned to Akin. "This isn't the end, boy. You'll always look over your shoulder, wondering when will come for you. Akin felt a chill run down his spine, but he stood firm. You don't scare me anymore, Damien. The Crimson Circle's remaining members were rounded up, and the university expelled those who were students. The authorities began dismantling the network, uncovering years of hidden crimes. For Akin, the relief was overwhelming, but the scars of his experience lingered. Back on campus, life slowly returned to normal. Akin became a quiet advocate for change, speaking to students about the dangers of cultism and the importance of standing up for what's right. At one such gathering, he shared his story. I joined the Crimson Circle because I thought it would make me powerful, he said, his voice steadied despite the emotions bubbling beneath. But all it brought me was fear, regret, and pain. Cultism doesn't give you strength, it strips you of your humanity. His words resonated deeply, especially with younger students. Akin's relationship with his family, particularly his younger sister Ada, grew stronger. He apologized for the pain he had caused and vowed to protect them at all costs. If it weren't for Ifeoma's unwavering support, he might not have made it through. She remained his closest ally, her wisdom and courage a guiding light. You're stronger than you think, Akin, she told him one evening as they walked around campus. You just needed a push to realize it. Months later, as Akin prepared to graduate, he received a plain envelope in his hostel mailbox. Inside was a single piece of paper with one chilling message: the circle never forgets. Akin's hands trembled as he read the note. He had escaped their grasp, but the shadows of deceit still lingered, reminding him that some battles never truly end. The cryptic note, "The circle never forgets," was a grim reminder that Akin's battle against the Crimson Circle wasn't over. The group's influence ran deep, and their promise of retaliation was not to be taken lightly. For days, Akin lived in heightened vigilance, his every step shadowed by paranoia. He refused to let fear consume him, but the uncertainty of when, or where, the circle might strike left him unsettled. If they're coming, I need to be ready, he told Ifeoma. What will you do? She asked, her voice laced with concern. I'll do what they don't expect, Akin replied. I'll shine a light on their darkness. Determined to prevent others from falling into the trap of cultism, Akin decided to dedicate himself to exposing the truth about these secret groups. He partnered with the police and community leaders to launch an anti-cultism initiative targeting schools, universities, and youth groups. We can't stop them if we don't understand them, Akin told Ifeoma one evening. I need to speak to former members, people who escaped like I did. Through the police, Akin connected with others who had once been ensnared by the Crimson Circle or similar groups. Their stories were harrowing, tales of coercion, violence, and shattered dreams. Why didn't you leave sooner? Akin asked one man named Tund. Tund sighed, his expression heavy with regret. When you're in, you feel trapped. They make you believe there's no way out, and even if you escape, you're never truly free. Akin decided to document these stories, creating a video series called Voices from the Shadows. With Ifeoma's help, he recorded interviews with former cult members, victims, and community leaders. Each episode ended with a simple, powerful message: choose light. Choose life. Say no to cultism. The videos gained traction quickly, spreading across social media and sparking conversations among students and parents alike. One evening, as Akin reviewed comments on the latest episode, he came across a message that stopped him cold. You think you're safe behind a camera. The circle is always watching. The message was a warning, but it didn't deter Akin. His defiance, however, provoked the Crimson Circle into action. One night, as he walked back to his hostel, he noticed a figure following him. He quickened his pace, his heart pounding. Turning a corner, he saw two more figures waiting. Where do you think you're going, traitor? One of them sneered. Before Akin could react, they lunged. But this time, he was ready. He had taken self-defense classes and carried a whistle to alert others in emergencies. Blowing the whistle, he fought back with every ounce of strength. The commotion drew the attention of security guards, who rushed to his aid. The attackers fled, but the incident left Akin shaken. The attack only strengthened Akin's resolve. I can't do this alone, he told Ifeoma. They began to build a network of like-minded students, parents, and community members dedicated to eradicating cultism. Their group, Shadows to Light, held workshops, organized protests, and provided support for victims. African proverbs became a key part of their messaging, such as, "The child who is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth." When the roots are deep, there is no reason to fear the wind. The proverbs resonated deeply, reminding people of the communal responsibility to guide and protect the youth. One day, Akin received a tip-off about a secret initiation ceremony planned by the Crimson Circle. The location was an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. This is our chance to stop them, he told the police. The authorities, bolstered by Akin's insider knowledge, planned a raid. Akin insisted on being part of it, despite the risks. As the team moved in, Akin's heart pounded. Inside the warehouse, they found terrified new recruits and a handful of senior members, including Damien. It's over, Akin said, locking eyes with his former tormentor. Damien smirked. You think you've won? The circle is eternal. But as the police handcuffed Damien and led him away, Akin felt a sense of closure. The raid marked a turning point. With Damien and other leaders in custody, the Crimson Circle's influence waned. Akin's initiative, Shadows to Light, continued to grow, inspiring similar movements across the region. At the university's next graduation ceremony, Akin was invited to speak. Standing before his peers, he shared his journey. I made mistakes, but I chose to fight for something greater than myself, he said. The battle against cultism isn't just mine, it's ours. Together, we can build a future where no one has to live in fear. The audience erupted in applause, and Akin felt a surge of hope. Years later, Akin's story became a beacon of inspiration for many. His video series evolved into a nationwide campaign, and his initiative helped thousands of young people choose a better path. The shadows of deceit still lingered, but Akin proved that with courage, unity, and determination, even the darkest shadows could be illuminated. As he often said, quoting an old proverb, however long the night, the dawn will surely come.